All right, we are a go. We are a go. So thank you guys for being able to watch. Those of you that can catch it right now, and those who can't, you guys will catch the replay. So Hank and I are actually going to begin chatting about something, a wave. You can call it a wave, basically. That well, Hank, I don't know. Would you call it a wave or a tsunami that's approaching?
Why don't we call it a confluence of the two?
Okay, all right.
And I say that because people sort of kind of know how a wave acts and predicts, and projects itself. And sometimes tsunamis are massive and can be very destructive. And then sometimes they sort of kind of wither out. And so both of them are unpredictable.
True.
Okay.
Both are unpredictable in nature.
Yeah, dangerous but unpredictable.
So here's what we're talking about. I don't know if you guys know what dip financing is. Dip financing. For those of us who may not know what dip financing is, Hank, do you mind going ahead and giving a definition?
Yes. DIP, debtor in possession financing, DIP financing. And what that basically means is it is special form of financing provided to companies in financial crisis. Okay. And typically this happens during restructuring under corporate bankruptcy law, such as a Chapter 11. And usually the debt is considered senior to all other debt, equity, or any other securities issued by a company. So that's a very, very legalistic aspect of what DIP financing is. And Leland, I'll also say that DIP financing, because the company is already is in a stressful situation, DIP financing is a little bit more expensive than traditional financing because a company might be going out the back door.
Correct. To make it a little more palatable or easier to understand, just in case that definition was a little wonky or tough, I want you guys to think about dip financing in its simplest form is a group or a third-party entity willing to offer financing to take out senior debt. Another way of saying senior debt is typically the primary debt or the debt that's in a first lien position. All right, you can typically kind of define that as senior debt. Senior debt can also mean that it's debt that is older age, that is coming due, that is in default, that's also needing to be replaced. Right, that debt has lived its term, and it's now time to either cash out or restructure. And so Chapter 11 is basically stating, hey, you have to restructure.
And Leland, would you say that the whole restructuring process can be lengthy, but it requires lots of expertise, particularly from a legal perspective?
Absolutely. So many times, because of the legalese that come along with debt financing or dip financing, you can incur a lot of legal fees just because, if you think about it, securities are basically structured around paper. Mortgages are structured around paper. So you're going to have, various lawyers or attorneys looking to find avenues, workarounds, things such as that. So you're always going to have that type of challenge, really. And what happens for the most part, Hank, is in this type of situation for these larger firms that are going through restructuring, they end up losing control of the company. And I think a great movie for anyone who would like to learn more about debt financing, just as an example, would be Barbarians at the Gate.
I haven't heard of that, but yes, the lenders. But there's a reason I think that the new lenders that are coming to the table would want first position because they want to ensure that they get their money back. They're not coming to the table on a whim. There's been enormous amount of due diligence performed. Due diligence. They've checked everything to make certain that they are making a sound investment. And by doing that, now for them to ensure that they're going to get their money back, they basically want to come in and take over your company.
So if anyone can think of, let's say, a company that is somewhat performing, and Hank, when I think of this, I really think of Toys R Us a few years ago. I think of how some of the hedge funds saw Toys R Us and they said, "Oh, here's a company that we believe, from our perspective, is not performing up to snuff or up to the brand that we believe the brand is worth. Let's go ahead and try to reposition that company." And sometimes it goes good,
right?
Sometimes it goes bad, right? It can go belly up.
Well, Leland, I think if you would just reflect back, there are a number of major brands that have gone through bankruptcy of late, and this restructuring. Some of them basically just scale back and shut down a few operations or a few locations, and then they do that until eventually, when you no longer see it, then that just means that they have totally shut everything down. Okay. But you're right, because here in Indianapolis some years ago, we had a large appliance store called H.H. Gregg, and they went through something similar to that.
Very similar, yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
And I could be wrong, but I don't believe H.H. Gregg is still around, right?
No, there's a building as I go off on East 86th Street. That's a really large building, but you're right. They're gone. And I think another reason why some businesses don't last, even though they go through bankruptcy and they may have dip financing, is you have to look at the competition, one, and then you have to look at how that particular business model is being affected by either by technology or just by how the competition is presented itself. Maybe Amazon is not a good example today, but we could also look at how Walmart caused a lot of mom and pop stores or smaller businesses to go out of business because of the way it positioned itself. So it's not that someone was just a bad owner or operator. It's just the idea that circumstances preclude you to have a meaningful livelihood.
That's true. So for those of you guys who are wondering, well, where in the heck would dip financing come from for a mid-size or large-size company? And what typically happens is that as the owners or the executors are filing some type of restructure or Chapter 11 bankruptcy to the courts, many times that documentation is public. And so other equity firms, right? So for example, let's say that we chose to go through, let's say our firm chooses to go through those documents, and we find out that a competitor of ours or what's considered to be a bolt-on acquisition, where you're looking for not a competitor, but something that could be a company that could have good synergy for what you're already doing. And look for that company, and you can think to yourself, man, this would be a great time or a great way or a great avenue for us to go ahead and get majority controllership of that organization. And so what would happen is if you or us or whoever, if you choose not to purchase the entire debt, right, of that company, you could purchase part of it or majority of it at a discount.
Correct.
In exchange for the equity.
Leland, and we're talking about under normal circumstances, right?
Right.
But how do you think the whole pandemic COVID-19 situation might impact dip financing?
I would, so keep in mind that those who are seeking assets that are on the cusp or the route to dip financing, those are normally businesses that would, they're basically the businesses that you're going to get on at a discount.
Okay.
And so one or two things will happen. Either more companies, entities, family offices, hedge funds, private equity firms are going to seek businesses that are on their way exiting, based on being banged up or hurt because of the pandemic, and they're going to see this as a way to grow their portfolio, and almost like snatching up companies at on pennies on the dollar, give or take, based on the debt and all that stuff, what they're paying for it. Or you're going to see the industry become exhausted with dip financing, so much so that no business or very few businesses will actually be able to be saved.
Wow. Well, I was looking at it from the sense that there was a lot of money placed in the environment or in the economy because of PPP or because of COVID. And will you agree that some companies who may have been teetering on the brink for a minute may have gotten a lifeline because of the possibility of participating in PPP?
Yes and no. Yes and no.
I agree.
So, PPP, from what I'm not a PPP expert, okay, but from what I understand for PPP, man, what an acronym. The market, their marketing team was good on that one. Call it P3, right?
Yeah.
So because of that, if I'm not mistaken, it only gives 2.5 months worth of operating expenses. And then it's select operating expenses at that. The second thing is that I believe the repayment or the structure program for repayment is somewhat deferred. I don't know.
Okay.
Months, 24 months, whatever. But it's deferred. So sure, in the short term, right? Because really, in true form, the short term for that is really nothing more than 2.5 months. So let's say 3 months. So in the short term, sure, yes.
Okay.
In the long term, no, because unless a company is able to get the entire thing forgiven, right?
Right.
You're still going to have to make those payments, and that's still going to be something that will be part of their operating expenses or take away from someone's profit and loss if they have not grown or outpaced that loan.
Okay. I agree with that. And again, sometimes when we're sitting around and we're talking about certain things, I have a tendency to think about how other events might be impacting an issue that we are seeing like right now today. And I say that only because, traditional interest rates for businesses are extremely, well, I won't say extremely low. They are lower than they were pre-pandemic. So I don't know whether that will have any impact on how expensive money will be if a lender came into your business as part of this dip process.
That's a good point, because what you're basically saying is that right now, with the capital being so low, you're basically saying who in the world would need dip financing with the capital being so low. And I would say, unfortunately, as always, there's going to be someone who will need it. because really with dip financing, whoever's coming in as a quote unquote white knight, that entity normally renegotiating the existing debt at a discount. And if they come in and let's say someone has a lot of debt, that's in some type of association with the government, I would think the government would be okay with them being able to pay 60 cents on the dollar for that non-performing debt. I would think. I don't know. I don't. But I would think that they would take that. Why? Because if it's 3P related, they're forgiving a lot of those type of loans. So you'll think that they will willing to take a discount instead of someone filing bankruptcy. Because the idea here, guys, for anyone who's following, when or if someone files bankruptcy, the idea is that either you're gonna get the debt wiped away, or you're gonna get the debt restructured to have a payment plan. Normally, that payment plan is either more or less than what what the business is having trouble paying. So it becomes one of those things of, hey, listen, for the next 7 years, I can pay you half the payment that I've been making right now, or I can go ahead and pay you 50% of what I owe, or we can call it a squash. If that happens, go ahead. Sorry.
No. If that happens, go ahead, please, sir.
If that happens, the company that comes in for the dip financing, they may negotiate it with the current borrower, right, the business who owes that money, and say, hey, listen, we've been able to negotiate and get in, because they may have negotiated it at 50%, but they may present it to the new acquisition as, hey, we've negotiated this down to 80%.
That's right, because they have the limit. But I was listening. I don't remember whether I heard it or I saw it. But because of the woes of the pandemic, and you were talking about the tsunami or this major wave that's coming on the front end, at some point in the future, the debt is due.
Always.
And I think from an overall societal perspective, not just from an economic perspective, I don't know whether the country will be able to deal with all of the confluences of the tsunami at the same time. So I'm hearing that there might be some legislatures that are looking at working together to look at this snowball that's growing momentum as a result of the pandemic. Being said, there may be some legal stuff happening, but people, please don't wait because you heard something. You've got to take advantage of, act now based on what you're faced with, and make the best business decision that you can make, because it could get a heck of a lot worse. If it doesn't and it gets better for you, then hallelujah. But if you wait a month thinking that something is going to be around the corner and not, you may have to close totally rather than just restructure.
Absolutely. Well, we're gonna wrap it up. I think that's a great closing statement. Seriously, that's a great closing statement.
Well, thank you for allowing me to participate today. Just find a good attorney, put all of the options on the table, and make the best decision, business, personal, and otherwise, that you can make. Thank you.
Thank you.